This is our second of 10 sessions. And again, this is just to remind me to say that talking about the practice of motivational interviewing is a bit like talking about playing the piano. You really learn it by practice. You learn by hearing and getting a sense of how it works. But I'll do my best to explain to you what we've learned. And we'll talk about how this can be useful. In fact, at the end of today, I'm going to talk to Dr. Rushdie a bit about application of this in India. This is a method that has evolved a lot over time. So it's, even though the heart of it or the core of it has been there all along, our understanding of it has certainly evolved over time. And this is the definition that I shared last time. Motivational interviewing is a particular way of talking to people about change and growth in order to strengthen their own motivation and commitment. So that's what we're doing. And I said last time that we have a mixture of my telling you things, showing you things, and you trying things out. Today, we will not have breakout rooms, so that's different from last time and next time. But usually we will have breakout rooms to try some of the component skills as well. but not today. Today, I'll be telling you some things, I'll be showing you some demonstrations, and we'll have time to discuss. In particular, I'm going to be talking about 4 components of the spirit of motivational interviewing, the underlying spirit with which it is practiced, and then also the 4 fundamental tasks of motivational interview. And I do plan to leave time at the end of today and every session for any questions and discussion. And you can use the raised hand tool if you want to ask a question or make a comment. And then also there's the chat function that's being monitored by the staff in Bangalore, and they can pass on to me questions that you post there as well. So I'll start with a mistake that we made. The first edition of motivational interviewing was published in 1991, and Steve Rolnick, my South African co-author, and I began teaching motivational interviewing and teaching the kinds of techniques that we described in the book. And we discovered something that when we watched people trying to do what we had taught them, they were literally doing what we had taught them, but it felt all wrong. There was something missing. It was like they were trying to use these techniques on people. They were trying to use them as a way of tricking people into changing or outsmarting people. And it just doesn't work that way. And that wasn't their fault. That was our fault. And so what we had to ask ourselves is what did we leave out? What did we not tell them? What did we miss so that they seem to not understand the way in which you do this? And we realized pretty quickly, and first wrote about this in 1995, I think, realized pretty quickly that what we had left out is the spirit in which you practice this. It's your mindset, or we made up the word heart set, with which you use these particular skills. And not having explained that, people were literally just trying to use the techniques. And it's empty and it doesn't work particularly well. And so now we emphasize, and in every edition have talked about the underlying spirit of motivational interviewing that is so important, because how you're thinking about what you're doing, how you understand your role as a helper, is really important. And so there are 4 components that we describe now of this underlying spirit with which motivational interviewing is practiced, and indeed with which it was created. The first of those is partnership. I'm not an expert on any other human being. I'm not an expert on you. You are the expert on you. Nobody knows more about you than you do. And when what you hope to change, what needs to change, is something that your client does, their behavior or their lifestyle, you can't actually fix that. You can't make it happen. You can't change that. You need your client's expertise. You need to partner with them when that's what you're trying to do, to help them to change a behavior or to change a lifestyle that is interfering with their health and their well-being. And as we're going to see, in fact, if you try to fix somebody, if you try to make them change, that inevitably just naturally evokes resistance. People don't like to be fixed. People don't like to have people telling them what to do and kind of taking charge. So motivational interviewing is always a collaboration. It's a collaboration between your expertise and your patient's expertise or your client's expertise. And both of those are needed. And it's a joining or a sharing of expertise. Secondly is the concept of acceptance. And this is my understanding of namaste also. It's a reverence for humankind and for our diversity, the richness of our diversity, and knowing that each person deserves respect and has inherent worth. Clients don't need to prove to you that they deserve your respect. They don't have to earn that. That's something that you assume to begin with. It's an interest in the person that you're trying to help. It's person-centered. Who is this person sitting across from me? I want to get to know them. I want to understand how they experience the world, how they think about things. And it accepts people as they are. Now, there's an interesting paradox, because if you're working in a way where your hope is to help people change, doesn't it seem strange to accept people as they are, And yet, when people feel accepted as they are, it becomes possible to change. When we experience ourselves as unacceptable, when we're ashamed, when I'm not okay, I just feel bad about myself, it's actually very difficult to change. And so the paradox is that when you accept people as they are, it then opens the door for them to become different, for them to change. And so that's an important piece of the spirit of motivational interviewing as well. A third piece is compassion. And we don't mean by compassion a sympathetic feeling. That might happen. You might feel sorry for the person that you're helping, or you may feel something in you, and that's okay. But that's not what we're talking about primarily with compassion. What we're talking about is what Mother Teresa was talking about also, which is the benevolent intention and your commitment in your work, in your life, to alleviate suffering and to help other people achieve their well-being, help other people to be what they can be. So when I'm sitting talking to someone in an interview, it's not about me. It's not about my importance or something that I'm to do here. Really, the goal, the objective is the other person's well-being, and that's the reason that we're together. That's the reason that we're having this conversation. We added that one in the third edition, I think, because some of the same techniques, some of the skills that we talk about can be used, for example, in sales, in trying to sell an automobile. A skillful salesperson will do some of the same things that we're talking about in motivational interviewing. A difference here, however, is that the prime objective is the other person's well-being. Now, if you're a good salesperson or a marketer, actually, you're not interested primarily in making a sale, but in developing a customer, in working with customers so that they are happy and satisfied and come back again. And so I don't think it's completely different. But motivational interviewing is not something that you're doing to promote your own well-being. It's done to promote the other person's well-being. And then the fourth component, empowerment. We used to call this one evocation, but I think empowerment is a better term. And we don't mean, Steve and I don't mean giving something people that they don't have, something that they are lacking. Sometimes psychotherapy it goes in search of deficits, or pathology, and that's not the way of thinking on which motivational interviewing was born. It's not, I have what you need and I'm going to give it to you. Many forms of psychotherapy seem to be like that. Whether it's insight, I will give you insight, or rational thinking, or skills. I'll give you skills that you lack that you need. It's not that wisdom, knowledge so much as recognizing the other person's wisdom, knowledge, and resources and motivation. And so the message is you have what you need, and together we'll find it. And that's what we mean by empowerment. It's helping to realize their own motivations, their own strengths, their own skills and talents, their own wisdom, and to use that in the process of trying to help them make the changes that they're seeking. And a really important piece of this is also knowing in your heart that people get to make their own choices. We don't get to make other people's choices for them, much as we might like to, even with our own children as they get older. People make their own choices, and that has to be okay with you. You accept that at a deep level, that this is the person who has the right to choose their way. And that's what your conversation will be about, with the choosing of the way. So those four things together, they kind of converge, or they blend to form what we're talking about as the spirit of motivational interviewing, or the spirit of a person-centered approach, more generally. Motivational interviewing is a person-centered approach. Now, I live in the American Southwest. And in New Mexico in particular, we have a large number of native tribes, indigenous tribes, who were here long before any white Europeans arrived, thousands of years before that. So these are people who have been on this land for a long time. And I was searching for a meditation or a way of conveying the spirit of motivational interviewing that might use some of that imagery or some of that wisdom. And so with a student and friend, a Navajo Dene person here in the Southwest, I began working on this meditation, which is something that you could say to yourself, something that you could focus on in preparation for doing a motivational interview. This one is phrased as if the person you're working with is a woman, but very easily the pronouns can be changed. But here's the language. Guide me to be a patient companion, to listen with a heart as open as the sky. Grant me vision to see through her eyes, and eager ears to hear her story. Create a safe and open place where we may walk together. Make me a clear pool in which she may reflect. Guide me to find in her your beauty and wisdom, knowing your desire for her to be in harmony, healthy, loving, and strong. Let me honor and respect her choosing of her own path, and bless her to walk it freely. And may I know once again that although she and I are different, yet there is a peaceful place where we are one. Going into a motivational interview with that mindset, with that heart set, prepares you well to practice the things that I'll be teaching you. Now, sometimes it's easiest to understand this method of motivational interviewing and the underlying spirit with contrasts. And we did a bit of that in the first session. If you were there, we had one exercise in which someone was talking about something they were thinking about change. And the helper's style, what the helper was doing was explaining why it was important for them to do that, telling them how they could do it, explaining the benefits that would come to them if they made that change, perhaps warning what would happen if they didn't make that change, and telling them do it, which is what we do sometimes as helpers. It's almost our reflex when we want to help somebody. But reactions to that are not good. Most people don't react well to being directed and told what's wrong with them and what they should do. So that's the spirit, and we can talk about that some more when we get to the discussion process. But I now want to talk about 4 fundamental tasks in motivational interviewing, like these 4 leaves of a clover: engaging, focusing, evoking, and planning. And I'll say a bit about each of them. Again, in the interview you just saw, mostly what was happening there was engaging, a little bit of focusing. What are the goals you have? Well, I need to get a job. I need to do something about my drinking. So that's starting to emerge. But the primary focus there was engaging. And these are like stair steps in a way. You begin with engaging processes. You begin with some fundamental skills of listening and acceptance. And they form the foundation for everything else you do. So that green bar goes under the whole rest of the staircase. And then focusing, then as I'll talk about in a bit, coming up with where are we going? What are the goals that we have to work together? And then the process that's most unique, I think, to motivational interviewing, which is calling forth the person's own desire, their own motivation, their own ability, their own resources to do the things that are the goals that they have set. And then finally, coming up with a plan of well, how's that going to happen? You know? Now, in America, at least, very often in the very first interview, we're jumping to the plan. You know? And you saw that happen in the first interview. And the plan was provided by the interviewer. What I want you to do is go to Nar-Anon meetings. So you've been to one, you didn't like it. Well, I want you to do it again. I want you to try it again. So this is very much the interviewer's plan, not at all evoked from the client, and not with the client's agreement. Maybe passive acceptance, but not agreement. So those 4 tasks are going on in motivational interviewing. And I'll come back and talk about more about those. But the first of these, engaging, there's a sort of underlying existential question in each of these. And the underlying question, often unspoken question, in the engaging task is, can we take a walk together? Can we take a journey together? It's a person-centered style. So the most important thing in the session is the person that you're sitting across from. And what you're hoping to do, and it can happen as you see in this last interview, can happen even within a few minutes, or at least begin happening within a few minutes, is to establish a sense of trust and safety. That I'm someone that you can trust, and it's safe here to talk about what's going on. It doesn't have to take a long time. The kinds of skills that we teach as engaging skills, and we'll start looking at and trying those in the next session, work relatively quickly. So you can see a change in how your clients are responding within minutes, even when you try this out. And you're listening to understand the other person's perspective, to understand your client's experience. What's happening to them? What's going on for them? What are they thinking about it? What are they feeling about it? And 4 fundamental listening skills come right out of Carl Rogers. Asking open questions. We'll come back to each of these. Affirming the client, reflecting what you're hearing, and giving summaries. And these engaging skills are the first thing to learn in motivational interviewing. Really these need to be comfortable for you first before you can go on to some of the more advanced skills and tasks of motivational interviewing. Then the second task is focusing. And the question here is, where are we going? So can we take a walk together? Where are we going? And in this task, you're developing mutual goals for your relationship. What are we going to be doing together? Where are we headed? This establishes a direction for where you're going, for the journey, for the walk. We used to say that motivational interviewing was directive, and then we decided that's not right, actually. That sounds too much like the interviewer's in charge, like the interviewer's making the decisions here. But there is direction to it. There is a sense of knowing where you're trying to go, and that's part of your job as a counselor, therapist, interviewer, educator, whatever it is that you do. Part of your job is knowing where you're trying to go and keeping things more or less on track to get there within the context of a supportive and trusting relationship. So the focusing task, establishing shared goals. So it's not just your goals as a provider. What are the client's goals, and where can those goals meet? Where can they come together? So you're trying to figure out, where are we going here? In psychotherapy research, there's something called a working alliance, which predicts good outcomes, basically. The better the working alliance, the better the client's outcomes. And one of the key elements of a working alliance is agreed upon goals. You and the client both know what you're trying to do and where you're trying to go. The third task, the one I said is most characteristic or most unique to motivational interviewing, is the evoking task. And the underlying question is, why would you want to go there? Can we take a walk together? Where are we going? Why would you want to go there? What you're looking for here is the person's own motivations for this journey, their own motivations for change. I've used the analogy of an internal committee. It's like inside of us when we're ambivalent, which is normal human nature, okay? When we're ambivalent, inside of us are members of the committee disagreeing with each other, some of whom see a need for change. In this woman's case, see the need to be a better mother. And there are other voices on the committee too, but I love my boyfriend and he uses drugs and, so what's going on? Well, what you're doing in motivational interviewing is calling more on the members of the committee who are arguing for change. And so there's a major shift that instead of me as the provider telling people what they should do and why they should do it and how they should do it, it's finding out why they would want to do it. And their motivations for the change are much more important than my motivations for them to make the change. And as the interviewer, you're trying to clarify and draw together all of these things that you are hearing. So you're remembering each of the little pieces of motivation that you hear. It's your job to remember those and begin to pull them together. And I'll show you some skills for doing that. A couple sessions from now. And then the planning task is, how will you get there? This is agreed upon goals and an agreed upon plan for change. Now, it's just an initial plan. The first plan may not work. That's okay. But it's a first step. Let's try this first. And you consult with the person as they begin to carry out the plan. So it's not that you come up with a plan and then you're done. Sometimes I guess that happens. But actually, if you're in a relationship with a person over time, as they try to enact the plan, as they try to work it out, stuff happens, things come up. And so you're there as a consultant to keep talking with them and to encourage them to persist and make progress, and to rethink the plan if necessary. And maybe the goals need changing, actually. And maybe we were headed down this path, and actually that's the path over there that we need to be walking on. So you're there with your expertise as a consultant on this person's life on which they are the expert. So that's kind of how these processes fit together. Those four fundamental tasks in motivational interviewing. And notice all of them have to do with asking instead of telling. In the first interview, the woman just knocks on the door and comes in. And there they are. In engaging, you're saying, can we take a walk together? Can we have a talk here? Where are we going? And what are your hopes for your life? How would you like things to be different? Rather than just telling people how things should be different. Why would you want to go there? How is this goal important to you? And how do you think you can get there? What are your ideas? So this curious asking mentality, it's not exactly an opposite, but it's different from telling. It's different from I'm the expert and I'm going to tell you what's wrong and I'm going to tell you what you need to do. And it has a very different result than a more directing style. Now, those four tasks sound linear, and I had a staircase there for you. And so it sort of sounds like you do them in order. And that's kind of logical, that at first you engage. And in fact, if you don't engage, you probably won't get much farther with the person. And then you have to figure out where you're going. So, then you kind of talk about the focus of where are we going? And you actually don't know how to do evoking until you know what your focus is. I may show you later in the course an interview I did with a fellow who was referred to me to talk about his drinking. And he really wanted to talk about his smoking, that he thought that was his real problem. Well, if our focus is to talk about drinking, talking about smoking might be related, but it's not quite where we're going. So in order to know what to evoke, you need to know what your focus is. And then logically planning would come later after you know where you're trying to go and why the person wants to go there. Then you might begin to develop a plan for how to get there. If you think about a guide, I may have said this last time, if you go to another nation and you hire a guide, what you want is for that person to be a knowledgeable consultant for you. Not to be the boss, not to take charge and tell you what you are going to enjoy and what you want, what you don't want, but rather to listen to you and understand what you would like to experience, what you would like to see while you're here, and then to help you get there, to help you do that. So it's that guiding mentality that's kind of in the middle between just listening to people and telling people what to do. So they sound logical, they sound linear, and yet as soon as you get into it, you discover they're not. Because those evoking skills you use all the way through the process in all of the tasks. So it's not like you engage and then you're done with that. Engaging continues. And the focus may change. You may think you're going down one path and you discover actually is that the goals are a little bit different. Evoking may start at the very beginning. So in some of the interviews we may look at, you see it happening in the first few minutes. So that can happen. Sometimes the focus is predetermined before the person gets there. So the order of these things can change. And when you get to planning, you're almost testing the water. You're kind of trying it out. And sometimes as you begin then to talk about a plan, the person begins to back away from it. And so you get the sense of, I need to go back and do a little more evoking. So you're flexibly moving around among these four tasks. It's not that they just happen in order. You finish one, then you do the next. They interweave. And so, yes, there's stair steps, but in a way you're dancing on the staircase. You may be going up and down the stairs. You were here for a while and you need to go back a little bit and maybe engage some more. And so it's that kind of flexibility. Now, the skills of motivational interviewing are very affected by cultural norms. For example, how in your culture do you ask somebody to do something for you? The big differences across cultures in that. And how do you respond to such requests? You know, the music in your voice matters. The tone of your voice matters. So even the words may not say it, you may be conveying cynicism or skepticism just in the way you're saying things. And of course, that's very relative to the culture in which you live. Also, cultures vary in their sense of their value on autonomy. America is sort of at the individualistic end of cultures. I mean, it's all about me. It's all about what I want and my freedom and so forth. And many cultures are not like that. I've lived in Scandinavia. In Scandinavia, there's much more a collective sense of well-being, and people pay a lot of tax there, and most of them are quite happy to do it because they like the way their culture is. They like the fact that people are taken care of, and we take care of each other here. And so in a collective culture, it's not just about me, it's about my community, it's about my family, it's about how we are together. And so those kinds of things also are a context within which motivational interviewing happens. You know? And there was a question about that at the very beginning of this. By the way, I just want to acknowledge that as of today, we have a candidate for president of the United States who is a woman of Indian heritage, who comes from a collective mentality. And I personally am very happy about that. So a question you may be asking is, how do you do motivational interviewing in India? I mean, this was developed in much more Western cultures and in very different contexts. So how do you do this in India? And my answer is, I don't know, but you will. As I begin to tell you about the method and how it developed and how it works in different cultures, you will have a sense of how this fits within your culture and your city and your region and so on. And if you grew up there and you know this culture well from the inside, then you'll be an expert on how you do this in your cultural context. I am not an expert on how to do motivational interviewing in China or in India or in Africa, but it's being used in all of those places. And it's people who live there, who are part of the culture, who learning what the method is and how it works, figure out how to do it in my culture, how to do it here. And by the way, you'll also figure out how you do it. Because I usually say, don't try to do motivational interviewing the way I do it. The task is to figure out how you do it. How does it fit in for you? If you watch Steve Rolnick and Terry Moyers and me doing motivational interviewing, we have three rather different styles. And we're all doing the same thing, but in rather different ways. You know? And so it has that kind of flexibility to it. How will you do motivational interviewing? How will this fit into your culture? I mentioned last time that we already have two members of the International MI Network of Trainers, Dr. Roshni, who is here today, and Dr. Sagar, who is not available today, but I think will be on some future sessions as well. And I want to invite Dr. Roshni now to join me and just have a conversation about motivational interviewing in India. I mean, what I was saying is that when you live in this culture, when you've grown up in this culture, then you have a sense of how it works there. And so I rely on people like Roshni to tell me, how does this fit? Which are the pieces of this that are less comfortable, or how does this work with how people are with each other in India? And so I would ask for your reactions, I think, to what I've been saying so far today, and just your own wisdom about, as you've been doing this in India and working in particular with people with diabetes in your case. How does this look in India? How does it sound? How does it fit?
Um, yeah, it's been fun to try and use it. We attempt to use it every day, and I'm lucky that today I see at least two of my teammates on these sessions. So thankfully, due to this big size workshop that you're holding for us, they're able to learn straight from you. Um, and one of my first concerns trying to use MI in India was, well, yes, people want autonomy, but I think that's more of an American style in personal health decision making. Whereas in India, I came into MI with a fear that the Indian patient is uncomfortable being empowered. And they balk at the idea of, you're asking me to decide what's going to happen with my health, almost to the point of doubting the doctor's competence, where doesn't the doctor know what they should do with me? Why is the doctor asking me? So it's almost backwards sometimes, if it, and that might be my fear as the clinician, but I think it's coming from the culture here. Is the respect goes to the doctor who's more directive and authoritative, in sort of telling the patient what is to be done. That's the
Mhm.
familiar place to be. And because we are a small voice or a small team doing this very unusual discussion style, people are not familiar with being spoken to like that.
What is your answer to that question? Why are you asking me, the patient, about how I would do this? What's your answer to that?
Yeah, I've had to evolve my response to that over time, because there's really no book. Like the way, Dr. Miller, you were, frank enough to say, well, nobody taught you MI. It didn't exist until you came up
Mhm.
with it. It came to you that this is the way you felt you wanted to engage with your patients. The same way I feel like, well, we're going to have to figure out how to do MI in India. We're going to have to
Yes.
deal with the discomfort. So what I started doing, Dr. Miller, honestly, is when the patient would, because I would come into this session excited to use MI because I believe in the heart set. It makes so much sense to talk to someone this way, because I would want to be spoken to this way and not any other way. And I'd spent enough years doing it the traditional way, is telling people what to do, and it didn't feel as fun, and it didn't feel as rewarding as, this equal power of two experts. But when I started using this beautiful tool, I got this sort of almost opposite response: is, wait, I don't want this much power in my decision making. I'm uncomfortable as the patient. You tell me what I should do. So they would flip it back and say, no, you're the expert. You're the doctor. That's why I'm here, is because you're the expert. And so when they would do that, I would feel a bit of tension in my body. I could feel uncomfortable. Like I was feeling a defense mechanism crop up. And so I had to work with that, because then I would sort of blurt out my MI slides is, no, no, this is a meeting between two experts. You're the expert in you, and I'm the expert in diabetes. I was like, that slide is supposed to save me now. Um, you know, and so I realized I was getting defensive. And so I had to work through that first, is let me make peace with the fact that the culture exists where they are uncomfortable not being, if I'm asking, giving them the opportunity to not be passive. See, the average Indian patient, and we have 250 healthcare workers who can confirm, the Indian patient is very familiar with being passive in their health decisions.
Mhm.
So this is a jolt to them.
I
Um,
knew.
New, it's very new. And, I'm going to see if my team members want to chime in on the chat and add what they have seen after they've started using MI and their practice as well. But I think as we have become more calm about MI as a way of being, we're not feeling so triggered when the patient says, no, you're the expert, you tell me what to do. We're able to hold space for that and sort of be that calm lake where the patient can reflect and use more reflections. So we're using more of the tools now. um, using more reflections to create more space for the client to realize we genuinely honor their autonomy here. And then they're able to let go of their cultural preconditioned passive stance. Because truly, this is where you found is it cuts across all cultures. I think that's where it gets to the universal aspect is once you shed that societal layer, even the Indian patient appreciates the autonomy, even though it came as a surprise initially, they do embrace it. And then we just have to hold that little bit of extra space for them to let go of cultural conditioning and then feel empowered to step forward and take charge. And then they start talking, they start getting more engaged, like the second movie that we watched. It does start to happen. So I think we need to be ready for the initial shock that the patient of India is going to have.
And I love that you're developing this collectively. I mean, that's how motivational interviewing began, with a group of us in Norway scratching our heads and saying, what is it that would seem to do that helps people to make these changes? And so you're collectively with your colleagues and with your patients saying, how does this go in India? How does this work? You see patients responding differently than they normally do, which is, in your context, maybe just be passive and listen and say, tell me what to do. But in truth, you need their wisdom as well, because, okay, I'm going to prescribe this medication. How are you going to take that? How's that going to fit into your life, And Steve Rolnick has a wonderful example from rural Africa of medications for an HIV positive mother who needs to take the medication every day to be HIV free and is embarrassed about doing so and doesn't want her family, who live in very close proximity with her, to see her doing it. So how it's not as simple as just take the medicine. How do you do that? And so with every patient, it's that kind of consultation where I have expertise and I'm very happy to share it with you. And I need your wisdom too. And I don't know how most people in India will respond to that, but it seems to me there's a human desire to be respected in that way.
Yes.
And to be consulted and not just told,
Yeah.
Okay, tell me what you know. Fine. I have training. I'm willing to do that. But I know that if what we're talking about is for you to do this in your life and to make changes in your life, it takes more than my wisdom to do that. You know more about you. This is your slide. You know more about you than anybody else in the world does. You're the expert on you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's a little stranger message in India, perhaps.
It is. And so what has helped me is to sort of hold on to my belief in MI as the technique. And I think for the team to believe in MI as the technique that we will use as a culture, and we will sort of resist too quickly getting into us being the expert, going back into telling people what to do or fixing them or rushing in with solutions and plans and asking them to make plans. So one thing I've sort of been really trying to do with the team is have them slow down on the planning, because in a busy Indian clinic where sometimes we use volume of large numbers of patients as the reason we don't spend time on MI and we jump straight to plans, thinking we need to do something quick, and saying, no, if we're going to do something quick, let's engage quick. Let's not plan quick. Let's spend more time on, like you beautifully, today those questions really helped me, is can we take a walk together? Where are we going? Why would you go there? If you only have 5 minutes, let's talk about that instead of how are you going to get there? Because you don't even know what point A is and what point B is for them.
Well, some people do come in ready, just tell me what to do. And
Yeah.
if somebody comes in like that, I want to stop smoking, tell me how to do it. Fine.
Yeah.
We'll pretty quickly talk about planning. And then what happens when you talk about plan? Do they do it or do they say, I don't know?
Right.
So it's continuing to work together.
Dr. Miller, I just got an idea. I'm just seeing the type of comments as Doctor was summarizing them, and I see two themes that this audience probably needs help with is how do we use MI if we can only spend 5 minutes?
Mhm.
So I'm wondering if you and I could maybe do a demo of that for them. Um, 5 minutes. And then the other question that's coming up a lot is how can we use MI when there is a stigma against mental health, social stigma?
Mhm. Mhm.
So I wonder if maybe on that particular topic, should we try and do a 5 minute real play?
Okay with me. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, the doctor who sent me that message about stigma and maybe I'm just making ideas up as we go, Dr. Miller, is one could be a 5 minute real play where someone is the client with stigma against mental health issues. And another 5 minute real play could be where the doctor only has 5 minutes.
Some an analogy I use because you, Dr. Roshni, have talked about this not just as a technique, but as a way of being with people, you know.
Yes.
And I say, well, can I play the piano for 5 minutes? Yeah, well, yes, of course I can. I mean, it won't be a great composition or whatever, but yes, of course I can. So this is something you can do in whatever amount of time you may have with the patient. People working in prisons talk about this MI as a way of doing hallway conversations as you're passing in the hallway. So
Yes.
so this is not long-term psychotherapy. This is a way of being with people, even in the short context that you have in primary care medicine or specialty medicine, or medication consults in psychiatry or whatever it is. It's a way of being with people for the time that you have.
So does anybody want to do the being the client? And Dr. Miller, I'm sorry to put you on the spot. I'm so much more familiar using MI for diabetes that if it's going to be a mental health concern, I'm hoping you'll do the counseling bit or be the helper for the 5 minutes, a busy helper who only has 5 minutes, and whoever put that challenge in the chat could be the client. Does anybody want to be the client for 5 minutes?
Well, how about you talk to me about my diabetes? I've
Oh,
I've had
here's,
I've had I've had diabetes for 18 years,
yeah, that's true.
and so I can very easily be talking to you about that as well, as
Sure.
you illustrate how you talk to patients for 5 minutes.
Sure. So
Is that
let's do that. And then I think Dr. Ipsita wants to be in a real play. So maybe she can
okay?
do the mental health stigma question with you.
Sure. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be the busy doctor who only has 5 minutes for Dr. Miller. Okay.
Yeah.
All
This
right.
happens.
Yeah. Okay. So hi, Bill. Good to see you again. We've got a few minutes, so I'm wondering what you'd like to talk about today for your diabetes.
I think I'm doing pretty well with exercise. I didn't used to do that, but 3 times a week now I'm in the gym for 80 minutes, and that's going well. And I think the challenges for me are more around diet, around eating in a way that helps me be healthy.
Okay, so you're already feeling better about your exercise and you're thinking about what you could do with your food. So could you help me understand what's difficult about food for you right now?
Well, where I live, I eat in a dining room here in this retirement center, and often they don't even have a vegetarian option, or they have one that they introduce on Sunday, and it's the same all week long. So I try it on Sunday, and it's not so good, and makes for a long week. So what do I do in between? So there are a few go-tos for me. Um, there's a vegetarian cauliflower crust pizza that's one option that's on the big menu that I can use, or get salads and so forth. But it gets a little boring too. Yeah.
Hmm. Okay, so you want some variety in your food and you're also wondering how the variety could still be good for your diabetes.
Well, yes, sure, yeah. I mean, some of the my dessert is something I just usually don't do. Uh, and yet it looks pretty good. Now and again, I'll try it. But mostly I like to, stay with things that are not going to drive my sugar up.
So
I
even
get
though
surprised.
sometimes, sorry?
I get surprised sometimes too. Like uh, watermelon's a fruit, and I thought, well, this must be okay. And I discovered from testing that it just drives my blood sugar up really high.
Wow. So I can see a lot of things there that even though sometimes it gets boring, you're still thinking about what to eat that'll keep your blood sugar stable. And you
Every
wish you
day.
had some more variety. Yeah.
Yeah. And I wish they knew how to cook vegetarian food a little better too.
Yes.
They're mostly used to cooking meat here, and so it's been a new idea of, oh, just vegetables. Well, what could you do with that? And sometimes it just comes out kind of brown and boring. So yeah.
Right. So you wish it was tastier.
I do.
Yeah. And then the fruit is sometimes spiking you up. So you're kind of wondering. So I'm wondering what you might do since you also have the need to honor a vegetarian way of eating and you're kind of limited for choice. I'm wondering what you might do.
Well, I cook for myself sometimes, of course. I mean, I enjoy trying different ways of preparing things in a vegetarian style, and so just the creative piece of that is fun. But usually, my wife and I go to the dining room and just kind of see what's available there. So, um, it's, just I guess my habit is just to go to the dining room, see friends there. That's a big socialization place too,
Mhm.
and try to figure out how best to stay with my diet within what's available there. Done.
Got it.
Okay.
So what I'm hearing, Bill, is that there are a couple of needs here, and you're thinking about a lot of things, and some of them revolve around needing some variety in your menu, needing some change in the flavor, wanting some fruit every once in a while, and also keeping food as part of your social life. And you're trying to figure out how to do all of this with your diabetes.
That's the balancing. Yeah.
Okay.
And
Do I
I'm
have your
also talking to the chef
Mhm.
and seeing how they might make more interesting things for those of us who like to eat vegetarian things. So,
Exactly. Well, do you mind if do I have your permission maybe to share something here?
oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, we do have some vegetarian clients, and they have been innovating on some, diabetes-friendly recipes. And I've seen what they've been working on. Would that help if I shared some list of some options for you?
I love recipes. Sure. I might even give them to the chef.
Okay, so maybe that's a plan. How does that sound to you? What do you think you might do after today if I gave you that list?
I think I would look at the recipes, probably try one or two of them out, and also see if I can get our chef interested.
Okay.
Good,
So
good,
yeah, I
good
just spent
idea.
this was 5 minutes,
Yeah,
8:53 to 8:58 is what we did.
well done. Yeah. Yeah. So illustration of how in a relatively short medical consult, you can be, this is how you can be. You provide your own expertise. Also, it's collaborative.
I was like watching the clock.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. It felt, this happens also. It felt like a long time. So
It did.
when you're with patients like this and you ask them how long the doctor spent with you, they tend to overestimate how long it was. And if the doctor's just giving direction and advice and they underestimate how much time the doctor spent with them. So the
Yeah.
perception of time is different.
Yeah. So Dr. Miller, just out of curiosity, how did that feel for you as the person being helped?
Well, that's how I want my healthcare providers to be. Yeah. And fortunately, my long-term primary care doctor just retired, so I have a new one to kind of break in. But that's how I enjoy working with someone who's taking care of my health. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I know Dr. Ipsita wanted to be in a real play
Sure.
where she could talk about stigma around talking about mental health.
What's the situation?
Good evening, sir. Sir,
Hello.
I thank you for the opportunity to let me demonstrate what I was trying to ask actually. So I'll
Good.
just pretend to be a patient, the kind of patient we often encounter in the OPD. So I'll be a patient who has maybe been referred from the medical OPD to the psychiatry OPD, and she's very much apprehensive about the very fact that she's coming into the psychiatry OPD.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. So you want to be that patient? Is that
Sure,
what you're
sir.
saying?
Yes, sir.
I just help me understand what you would like here. So
Uh,
you're interested in how I would talk to such a patient?
yes, sir. How to, my basic doubt was how, in such a situation, we can probably use the principles of MI to encourage the patient to speak up about the issues they are facing, about identifying the problems, and maybe maybe working together with them. Because in many of these patients, they try to deny that they can even the possibility that they can even have a psychiatric illness, and that resistance, and even from the family members, that thing is much there from because this is a real thing that people do have that stigma, at least in our country, about psychiatric illnesses, to be precise. So uh, if you could demonstrate how to address that, if I pretend to be that patient, for example.
And okay, we'll take about 5 minutes or so and give it a try. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So hello, tell me what brings you here today?
I totally don't know. I went to the medical OPD for a headache and I was not able to sleep. And they didn't even look at me. I mean, they did probably a little bit. And then they just asked me some questions. They probably thought I'm mad or something. They sent me to you. I really don't have any psychiatric illness. Why am I even here? I just need some help with my sleep and my headache. Now, and my
That's what
entire family feels I'm mad or something. Now they're just torturing me more.
No, I don't particularly care about labels like that. But what you're interested in is sleeping better, and also you're having headaches and you'd like some relief from that, huh? Tell me tell me
Yeah,
about uh, tell me about your sleep first of all. What's happening?
um, I'm not able to sleep. I haven't slept in so many days. I
At
really
all?
can't fall asleep.
Wow. So you have trouble falling asleep to begin with, and that's difficult. That's been going on for a while.
Yes, yes, around a month now.
So this is new for you also. You're used to sleeping pretty well, and then
Yes,
suddenly going to sleep is a big problem. That's a surprise.
yes, that's what I told the medical specialist. I asked to get some NCCT or an MRI done, and they just sent me to you. My actual concern is not getting addressed. I don't have any psychiatric illness. Why am I even here?
What you want is to sleep better.
Yes,
And then you said something about headaches also. What would you like to be different there? What's hurting you?
I mean, I was reading up, I searched the net and I found I could maybe have a brain tumor or something. I need to get an NCCT done. I need to check what is happening. Now, my family members, after the medical specialist wrote yesterday that I should come to you, now everyone in my family, they are just laughing at me. They feel I don't really have any problem. Nobody's taking me seriously now.
I want to take you seriously, and I want to understand what concerns you and what you would like to be different in your life. Now, I'm not worried about labels and illnesses and all of that stuff. Obviously, that concerns you. Uh, you don't want to go there. But what you do want is to sleep better and to
Yes.
not have these headaches. And that's what's puzzling you.
Yes.
Now, why is that happening? And what can maybe more importantly, what can I do about it?
I don't know how. I mean, I'm not mad.
No, I don't. And I'm not even concerned about that. What I want to help you with is what concerns you to sleep better and with these headaches that are troubling you. And that's where I would focus my time.
Okay.
So how would you like your sleep to be? Sounds like you'd like to go back to the way you were sleeping before. That was good. Is that yeah?
Yes, I mean, right now I can hardly get around 1 to 2 hours of sleep, and even then, even that is so light. Like if somebody is making some sound, I have two children at home, and they are always jumping around. They are creating such a fuss. So even those 1 to 2 hours, it's not very deep sleep, and then I'm feeling tired the whole day because of that. And there's this headache, and I'm feeling so angry at the kids also. And I mean, nowadays nobody even listens to me. I just have to, I don't know. I mean, I have been shouting more at everyone at home probably. But I just don't feel good. So, I mean,
Yeah, of course. Well, when you sleep so little, it affects so many other things. It affects how you feel. It's hard to concentrate on things. It's just hard to do the other things you need to do. And so I understand that just a couple of hours of sleep is not going to be enough for you. And you'd like to be able to sleep well and sleep longer like you used to.
yes.
Mhm. Well, I'd like to help you do that. I'd like to help figure out how you can get back to sleeping well and not feeling so distressed all the time because you're not getting your sleep. I mean, I understand exactly what you're saying, I think, and would like to help you with that.
So you can help me with that? You
I
really
hope
can?
so. I have some ideas. I'll need your ideas too, but yes, I know a lot about sleeping. And I can give you some ideas to try. I don't know what will work for you exactly, but we'll figure out. And I will work with you until we find out what works for you.
Okay, but what if you mean I have to come here often?
I don't know how often. We'll try some things and see how it goes. And if we find something that works for you relatively soon, that's good. Yeah.
But then
Uh,
everybody will come to know I'm coming to the psychiatry OPD. How would that figure out? Everyone
yeah,
is already behaving in such a bad way to me, and then
it would be better for you if you were going somewhere else to talk about this. It's coming here just as creating some embarrassment or some problems for you just because of what it says over the door.
I yeah.
Yeah. Well, and if you're not comfortable coming here, of course you don't have to. But if it's possible for you to come here, I certainly can try to work with you a while and just see what we can come up with that might be helpful to you. So
Okay, okay,
that
we
about
can give
five
it a
minutes?
try. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, that is
Okay.
5 minutes. Thank you.
It's
Thank
it's
you, sir.
it's good. It's good listening, you know. And we're going to be focusing on this very much in the next session as well, next couple of sessions. But it's not complicated stuff. It's making sure that you're understanding the person's experience and hearing their perspective, and letting them know that you hear their perspective. It doesn't have to take a long time, um, but it's tuning into them rather than immediately switching into solutions mode. I was trying to extend some hope, which is realistic, that there are things you can do. Um, and also that I'm not sure what the right thing will be yet, but we will try things to find out what works for you. And I'm willing to work with you until we find what works for you. I think those are important messages that you can give. It's not a solution to the social problem of stigma. I mean,
Hmm.
this woman's family are troubling her about you're going to the crazy house. You're going to, what are you going there? Teasing her about it. Well, I don't have a solution for that in particular. That's a social issue. But is there a way she could be going to a regular health clinic and dealing with this? I don't know your health system, so I don't know where else she might go to get help with this. But if she's willing to, put up with coming to this mental place for a while, I'll do what I can to help her. Yeah.
It was very powerful when you affirmed her autonomy, that she doesn't have to come here again if she doesn't.
Which is the truth, of course, also.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
a nice thing about emphasizing autonomy is you're telling the truth. Yeah.
I'd be curious if I was Ipsita. I almost felt like in that 6th minute when you said you don't have to come back here if you don't want to, but you had already promised you were willing to work with her and find a solution, that she's going to almost activate and say, I want to be in this clinic. I want to talk to this person.
I would think so.
Yeah.
And 5 minutes isn't much time to gain trust from somebody.
Yeah.
But how you are with people very much influences whether they want to come back or not. Again, if you take the fixing role, people run away from that typically. It doesn't feel good, and if you listen to people, it's an unusual enough experience that they'd like some more of that, and so those engaging skills, which is where we'll be starting next, are pretty powerful in themselves. Carl Rogers thought sometimes that's all you need. All you need to do is listen well, and that's true sometimes. But it's also my experience that often there's more than that you can offer that is helpful. Say next time, I'm going to be focusing on the engaging task and skills particular to that task that you then use throughout all of the tasks of motivational interviewing. And in particular, the skill of accurate empathy, which we know a lot about from a scientific perspective. And so that will be our subject next time. I'll see you then.